If there's one thing you know about me, you know I'm going to have some fire intro music. It doesn't matter what show, whether it's Back with Ron, with my guy Ian Beckles, or with my guy Zach Blobner, you know you're going to have some fire intro music, and that's what we got right here on the Recher podcast. Hope everybody is having a wonderful day, whether you're watching here in the Tampa Bay area or abroad. What a show we have for you guys today. At 12:20, Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times is going to join us. What is the latest with the Rays Stadium? They're going to be playing, obviously, we know in Tampa at Steinbrenner Field, but what does the Pinellas County commissioners have to say? Some are not too happy. 12:40, Leo Fernandes, one of the greatest Tampa Bay Rowdies of all time, is going to join us. Unfortunately, the team got bounced last week, but we did hear some good news that Leo has re-upped with the club. He and Lewis Hilton, they'll be back next season. We'll get into that with him again at 12:40. And then at 1 o'clock, Billy Quarantillo, UFC fighter. He's actually going to be fighting here in a couple weeks at Amalie Arena against Cub Swanson, absolute legend in the game. So we're going to talk Mike Tyson against Jake Paul, which is going to happen tonight, and UFC 309 tomorrow, which is going to be crazy. John Jones, Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight championship of the world. But we're going to start the program today talking a little Lightning hockey, and we're going to do that with our pal Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com. He's at the TGH Iceplex there in Brandon as the Tampa Bay Lightning are practicing. Double E, great to be with you. Make sure you guys go sign up. If you want to talk about supporting local, Erik is one of those guys, lightninginsider.com. Go sign up today. Double E, thanks for joining us. I see number 21 was on the ice for the Bolts today.
Who's that? Number who? Oh, yeah, that guy.
Number 21, Braden Point.
Yeah, good to see you, right? Like, we weren't sure. There's kind of been a lot of, I don't want to say mystery, but, some uncertainty around his status after he left the game against Winnipeg a week and a half ago up in Winnipeg. And, he's been on the ice a couple of times, and then he wasn't on the ice, and, not getting any real clear-cut clarification on his status. But good to see him on the ice today, and he looks like he's, at least from the video I posted and from kind of watching him here in the early parts of practice, he looks like he's full go. So we'll see what that means for his status tomorrow.
Now, I know I just saw from Benjamin Pierce that he didn't take part in line rushes, so I wouldn't expect him to possibly be in the game tomorrow night against the New Jersey Devils, but there really is no reason to rush him back.
No, and I mean, he's such an important part of the team, and if it is a groin muscle, which is suspected, it's not confirmed, it's not known. As we know in hockey, all you get is upper and lower body, and They have classified it as lower body. So if it is a groin muscle, we know, that's such an important part of what hockey players need to skate up the ice. So yeah, there's no reason to push it, but we'll see what John Cooper has to say about it, and we'll see what Braden Point has to say once they get off the ice. But the fact that he is out there and skating full, I don't read too much into line rushes on a day like today. We'll see what they look like tomorrow if they go on the ice. But just either way, it's just good news to see him out there with the guys.
Questions, comments for Double E, Erik Erlendsson from lightninginsider.com. Feel free to put them there at the bottom of the screen, whether you're watching on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Twitter/X. We will get to them here today on the program. And, man, you want to talk about a way to win your 300th game. Andrei Vasilevskiy, oh, yeah, no big deal. Just beat the 15-1 Winnipeg Jets. I thought it was one of the more solid all-around games to the team. We'll get into Andrei Vasilevskiy in a second, but you look at guys like Cirelli and Hagel and Nick Paul. Those three guys were absolutely flying around the ice last night. Yeah, we don't even have to mention guys like Gensler and Kucherov either, but when those three guys are skating like that, Double E, it really takes his team to the next level, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's always a challenge because, you're off for 7 days between games and, you practice a couple of times. It's a challenge to get back up to game speed.
Right.
And especially when you're facing a team like Winnipeg that can skate. They got every line they throw at you. They can skate and they're physical, and that's 15-1 is no fluke, right? They're a really, really good team. So there was a challenge, and I think that because they faced Winnipeg last night, I think that had the team's attention, and it really should have their attention. But you could see right away from the beginning that they were not going to test the waters. They were jumping right in, and they were going to force the issue. They were going to be the team that dictated the way the game was going to go. And I thought Nick Paul in particular sort of led that way with the way that he was moving up the ice and the way that he was involved. I mean, I haven't seen Nick Paul that involved on so many aspects of the game that we saw last night from him. So I think those guys really wanted to set the tone. They went out and they did it. And, whether you want to use the term, they dragged the team into the fight. We hear that phrase a lot in hockey. I thought those guys did exactly that. They were the ones that led by example, and everybody followed behind them.
You don't always see it from Hagel and Cirelli, maybe 5-on-5. I mean, we know what kind of menaces they are on the penalty kill, but when they do bring it to their even strength play, I mean, my goodness, it's just how do you face the Lightning, right? I mean, that thing is the depth. You're worrying about how the things have changed over the years, not having as much depth, but when they skate like that, I mean, the Lightning are such a handful, and that's when you really start thinking ahead, like, what can this team do? Because if they get contributions like they did last night from Brandon Hagel and Anthony Cirelli, I mean, the sky's the limit for this team.
Yeah, and it's interesting because with Braden Point out, obviously it kind of jumbles things around in terms of what the lines are going to look like. And we've seen John Cooper use the lines differently here in the past few games without Braden Point. He's had Gensel up there with Cirelli and Kucherov. And, as we saw last time, move Gensel down. And, so trying to figure out what's the right combination. But those two, I don't know. Ever since Brandon Hagel came here, they just have the chemistry that, coaches always look for from two forwards. They always say they look for the pair, and then they'll figure out who the other winger is going to be when you get a centerman and a winger that has that kind of chemistry. And certainly you've seen it to the way they play on the penalty kill. But, yeah, I think it does translate to 5-on-5, and they both have a similar approach in how they want to play the game, and that's with speed and tenacity and forechecking and everything that they're both really, really good at. If they're going to play like that, Anthony Cirelli is not a true number one center, but he's a pretty good number two. He's probably ideally number three, but he's a pretty good number two center in terms of how, the Lightning want to utilize him. But if those two are going to be that effective every time on the ice, not just the penalty kill, it's going to take some of that pressure off, Point, Kucherov, and Gensel, when Braden Point gets back. So good to see.
Also good to see our guy Thomas Scully up in the press box last night from the We the Thunder crew. Did the third period where they protected the lead and didn't shoot worry you? I know Coop said he wasn't happy. I didn't look at it as much as they weren't putting their foot on the gas pedal, Double E. I just think naturally when you're facing a team as good as the Winnipeg Jets, they're going to have some pushback. What did you make of that last 20?
So I never felt like the Lightning were in danger in that third period, right? And that's what you look for. Of course, the best way to keep yourself out of danger is to keep the puck in the offensive zone and put some pressure on there. But, like I was on with intermission with Chief and Greg last night, the one thing that I said going into that third period is just be smart. Don't play safe. Just be smart. And I think what we saw a lot of times was just making sure the puck cleared. And it wasn't a situation where it was chip the puck out, change, right, change, and try and defend. I didn't feel like they were in a situation where they were just defending to try and hang on to that win. I think that they were playing smart defensively. Yes, you get that next goal, then you really take the wind out of a team like Winnipeg because they've been on such a high to start the season. So I know the lack of shots probably bothered the coaching staff, but it's not like they were just under siege during the third period. They weren't holding on. They were playing, I think, a smart game in terms of just making sure the puck gets out. And they, like, it wasn't chip out and retreat, right? It wasn't that. That's how I viewed it. And to me, it wasn't a shutdown third period, but it was a smart way to close out that game, which they did.
Yeah, you think about it too. I look at the guys that were on the ice at the end, and sometimes they do put, or I think a lot of times they put Nikita Kucherov out there with the empty net. He's just so smart with the puck, and he just has a way to be able to get that puck and put it in the back of the net. But yesterday it was Soragel. I
there
like
you go.
That's the
he just
tag
named
team.
the line.
Cirelli and Hagel. Soragel. I like that. Cirelli, Hagel, and it was Jake Gensel. How many times does a guy score 2 goals in one game, Ian? He's probably the 4th or 5th player you talk about. I mean, you think about it. Cirelli, Hagel, and Nick Paul were just fantastic for 60 minutes. The historic, Andrei Vasilevsky, fastest player in NHL history, 300 wins. I mean, Victor Hedman passes Steven Stamkos for second most assists in franchise history. And then, oh yeah, Jake Gensel scores 2 goals. I mean, that dude has proven so valuable early on this season. I don't know about you, but Gensel is I always knew he was a good player, but watching him on a day in, day out basis, I think you really then appreciate how good this guy is.
He's a quiet superstar.
Yeah.
Right? Like, overshadowed all those years in Pittsburgh because of who he played with. Probably a little bit overshadowed here too because of who he's playing with and the stars that are on this team. But he's just such a smart player. Like, he just understands how to play the game the right way. He knows how to find soft spots. He knows how. The play that Nick Paul set him up last night for the opening goal, by understanding to trail the play and find that soft spot. I'm not sure he expected Nick Paul to go backwards between his legs,
right,
to find him with it. But then you look at the shot that he did. Like, he used that defenseman as a screen and put it through the defenseman's legs so that Eric Comrie never saw it. So he didn't really have a chance to stop the goal. And he put it in an area where he wasn't going to hit the goaltender with it. I've been covering this game and this team for 25 years, and I'm still amazed at how fast hockey players process information. And that's where you talk about hockey IQ and understanding how things are going to play out. And I just look at that play by Gensel last night. You just understand how high his hockey IQ is, because he processed all of that in a matter of a second and a half. It's mind-boggling, and he's just been a great addition to this team. Really compliments Point and Kucherov when he plays with them. And as we saw last night, they were on the fractured line, right? It was 7-11 last night. So it was Paul and Gensel, and then it was Nikita Kucherov a lot, but we also saw Mitchell Chafee out there for some shifts as well. So it didn't matter who those two guys are playing with. They were an effective line. And, Jake Gensel has been a great player. And if you want to say sort of like when Anton Strawman came here, like, you knew, especially looking at some of the underlying numbers with Anton Strawman, that he was a good player. But until you see him play the game every day and understand how they operate and work, you just get a deeper appreciation for how good they are.
Doubly, I don't know if there's any deeper appreciation needed when you're talking about the guy between the pipes last night and who's been for the better part of a decade, and Andrei Vasilevsky. No surprise when this guy makes history, but, a Vezina, couple of Stanley Cups, you look at him and you say, no surprise, he's the fastest at 300 wins in the NHL. But just to see him day in, day out, night in, night out, the way he prepares, the way he shows love to his teammates, like, this is a guy that's destined for the Hall of Fame one day. And it's, man, I know speaking for myself, it's just been a joy to watch him grow, coming up behind a guy like Ben Bishop and just, being so hard on himself after losses. Sometimes we had to kind of learn how to dial it down. But wow, to be in the building last night, you could tell that it meant a lot, not just to him, but the entire Lightning organization.
Oh, for sure, because that's how much he's meant to the organization, right, since he got here. And, I was thinking about this last night. Like, I distinctly remember his first game, his first win. It was in Philadelphia, December of 2014. So it's been almost 10 years. And, to see that growth from that night to where we are now, and think he could have reached this sooner, right? Like, you had the COVID years where games were limited, and then you had the 56-game season, so it was the options in terms of number of starts was fewer. He had the broken foot in 2018 that cost him a month. Obviously, he missed a month and a half to start last season. He could have reached this milestone much sooner, and he, from the moment he was drafted, like, you could tell what he was going to mean to this organization. And go back and think that Steve Yzerman turned Steve Downey into Andrei Vasilevsky. It's right. An amazing trade that he pulled off that year. And he works so hard off the ice. It's the one thing you always hear about him. We see the finished product night in, night out. We don't see the work that goes into that product. And, sometimes they actually have to save him from himself. Like, there was a lot of questions yesterday. Well, why isn't Andrei Vasilevsky on the ice? They've been off for a week. How come he's not out there for the morning skate? Sometimes you got to make sure he gets rest. And it's not necessarily physical rest. There's a lot of equipment that goaltenders put on. And it's a lot of time and effort and energy and mental energy to put all that gear on. And if you can save a goalie all that time to be out there for 15, 20 minutes for a morning skate, have him take a day off every now and then, because he needs it. You think of all the high leverage hockey that guy has played over the past decade, and all the minutes in the postseason and everything else he's played. Fascinating to watch, phenomenal to watch. His numbers will be in the rafters one day, and his plaque will be in the Hall of Fame one day. And like he said last night, he wants 300 more.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And shout out to our guy, Coach John Crumley. I want to talk about a legend. So cool to see him here. Two of my favorite all-time local sports guys at the same time. We love you, Coach Crum. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about some of the things with Vasilevsky. It's a good thing he didn't break his foot, because then we would have never had the Louis Domingue era for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I was just having this conversation yesterday. I don't know. I'm sure you remember this. When he went in the 2015 finals after Bishop got hurt, I remember being in the locker room, because remember, he didn't go to the podium. He was in the locker room, and Lightning PR Brian Breezen was standing so close to him because his English wasn't that good. But it was such a huge moment that you had to hear from him. And he was just so tough, and just, you know how the media, I don't know if you guys out there know, but when the Lightning are in the playoffs, and especially in the final, we have all that Canadian media there. It is like a herd of buffalo going right. And everybody was like surrounding Andrei Vasilevsky. And just to think that meek, shy, young Russian kid now is one of the best goalies that we've seen in this generation. And he's so much more comfortable in his own skin. Last year, somebody farted during one of his post-game scrums in the locker room. Austin Watson. But like, he takes it in stride, and now he's like joking with people. It's really cool to see him not just mature on the ice, Double E, but also off the ice as well.
Yeah, and we start to see a little bit more of his personality. Like, he's a funny guy.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
We don't get to see it much, and certainly the public doesn't get to see it much, because when he's on camera, he's really concentrating on his words and what he wants to say, and sometimes the humor doesn't quite come across because of the language. But like, his teammates will tell you how great of a personality he is. And if anybody has never seen it, I'm sure it's out there on YouTube. For a number of games a couple of years ago, I think when Ben Bishop was actually still here, when Rick Peckham would do the post-game interviews down in the locker room, Andrei Vasilevsky would make a photo bomb every time. I'm sure somebody put that compilation together. Go find it. That's his personality. And so we know his personality on the ice. He's a fierce competitor. He hates to lose. He got mad in practice the other day because he was letting goals in left and right. He didn't look like he was comfortable, and he was just getting, PO'd at himself. And then he went out and had a game like he did last night. That's the competitiveness in him. But it's nice to see people kind of get to see the other side of Andrei Vasilevsky, because he is a quiet, can't even call him a kid anymore. He's a quiet guy, but he's a great, and he's fun to talk to when he's away from the camera.
Yeah, he's amazing. And if you remember the video from the jet ski, right, when we started doing that with Alex Killorn and everything, and Andre was involved with that. You just love Andrei Vasilevsky. Lightning, big. They got to turn the page now, right? A lot of emotion from the game last night, Double E. What's the main thing? What's the focus for tomorrow night as they welcome in the New Jersey Devils squad?
Just pick up the commitment they had to playing defensively. That's one thing that Ryan McDonough talked about after the game last night, was that commitment to playing good defense and being physical. I mean, Jersey's a high-flying team. They went down to Sunrise last night and knocked off the Panthers, who've been riding high. The Panthers had an 8-game winning streak, going on, and they've gotten off to a great start this season. But Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, who had a hat trick last night, and Nico Hischier, and that's an up-and-coming team. Made the playoffs a couple years ago. Obviously, they advanced to round 2 of the postseason. Got their goalie now, right? They got Jacob Markstrom in net now. That was the one thing that they felt that they were kind of missing after missing the playoffs last year. So the Lightning, they just have to make sure that they're focused and dialed in to the small details of the game. And the 6 days off, that's one thing that they really re-emphasize, that they kind of got away from them. Just look at the contrast between the 2 games against the Winnipeg Jets. They got out to a 2-0 lead in Winnipeg and couldn't hold on to it, primarily because they couldn't stop turning the puck over.
Right.
You go and you look at last night, of course, turnovers are going to happen. And on the one Winnipeg goal, Victor Hedman had an opportunity to kind of make a better decision with the puck and threw it up the wall, and it was picked off. And, 5 seconds later, it's in the back of your net. So those things are going to happen, but you have to limit them. And I felt that in a lot of ways, they did limit them. There was a couple of stretches where Winnipeg was putting the pressure on, but they cleaned up their game. That's why I talk about the third period, playing smart, not turning the puck over. If there was a chance to just flip it out of the zone, you flip it out of the zone and you don't feed the fire. You don't put that fuel on that fire to let the other team come back at you. That's what they have to continue to do, because during that little rough stretch with a 4-game winless streak, that was the main theme, was turnovers at bad times and in dangerous areas of the ice. That's what you have to continue to do, because we know this team has the skill. Don't beat yourself. If the other team beats you, that's fine. You tip your cap, you move on. Don't beat yourself. And I think when this team gets themselves in trouble, that's what happens.
Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com. We've been talking a lot lately about supporting local. Head on over there, lightninginsider.com, and sign up today. Double E, we appreciate your time. Go interview the guys, and I'll see you tomorrow night up in the press box, Lightning and Devils. Appreciate you, buddy.
All right. Appreciate you, and glad to have your voice still making waves and airwaves in this area, because you're an important voice in this area, Jay, and you've always been a big supporter of me, so I got your back, and keep it going.
Appreciate you, my friend. The one and only Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com. Yeah, I mean, it's very important for me to still be out there, and people are asking, like, you still have credentials? You're still going to cover the games? Yes. I mean, and I'm not taking that lightly at all. It still means a lot to me that the people here in the Tampa Bay area, the organizations are all, still credentialing me, letting me covering. Just because I'm not working with DAE anymore doesn't mean I'm not covering Tampa Bay sports. I'm an independent contractor. I've got the Recher podcast, which isn't going to be daily before the new year, but in 2025, man, we're going to hit the ground running. One of my favorite guests that we had during our tenure with Jay and Zach is our next guest here from the Tampa Bay Times, the one and only Colleen Wright. We had her on, I think it was like 20 minutes, because everything regarding the stadium, she is all over it, and she just does such a great job from the Tampa Bay Times. Colleen, unmute your mic so we can hear you, because we love you. And thanks so much for joining us today. It looks beautiful out there.
Yeah, I thought it was nice, so I thought I might go outside. Got to take advantage of it.
I hear that. So, Colleen, thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, the biggest news in the Tampa Bay area over the last 24, 48, 72 hours is that the Tampa Bay Rays are going to be playing the 2025 season there at Steinbrenner Field on this side of the bridge. I'm on this side of the bridge. I'm in West Chase, so I'm in the kind of a funky area. But yeah, they're in Tampa. But Colleen, we've been having this discussion even before the votes. I mean, it's been pretty crazy. What was your initial reaction to finding out that the Rays were going to be playing in Tampa in 2025?
So I'm always viewing everything from a political lens. I am a local government reporter. My day job is covering the St. Petersburg City Council. So I've got a different view than maybe people who, just cover the team or cover baseball, that kind of idea. I'm always centering, what does this mean for the Rays deal? And I'm not sure it's a good move for the Rays deal as it stands in St. Petersburg and Pinellas County. The Pinellas County Commission is not exactly thrilled. They might get the ideas. They get the reasoning behind why the Rays have gone to Tampa, but they're pretty upset. They're pretty upset that the Rays haven't been communicating with them about what their plans are. They've complained about radio silence. And, some of the commissioners I spoke to yesterday were saying that, we get why they go to Tampa, but we wish we just could have had more of a conversation about why venues such as like Baycare Park, where the Threshers play, and the Phillies have spring training, Dunedin a little bit smaller, but could we have worked something out? Is there something we could have done? They're pretty upset that there was just no discussion. And this matters because on Tuesday, they have an item on their agenda to approve $312 million in bonds. And so there's a lot of money on the line. You've got 2 new commissioners coming in. They're being sworn in Monday. This will be among the first votes they take. And they could say no. And just like that, there would be no ballpark. So I'm always viewing things through that lens. And I don't know. I don't know how Tuesday's going to go. It's not, if you want the deal to happen, if you like the terms that, the city council and the commission agreed to back in July, those are in danger.
Wow. And Colleen, yeah, you do such a great job for the Tampa Bay Times. I'm good buddies with Mark Topkin, who covers the Rays on a daily basis as their beat reporter, and he has had nothing but great things to say about you before and during this entire process. And we're actually going to have, or I say we, but I'm going to have Chris Lavala, one of the Pinellas County commissioners, on with me on Monday at 12:20, and he's kind of been the big dissenting voice throughout this entire thing, and people are coming after him. I just saw him post something that he's getting, I don't want to say death threats, it might be, but he's had to report some of the calls that he's getting to the sheriff because there are people that are coming at him. And I'm just like, wait, well, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Of course, we want to see the Rays play. And for all the people out there that have said, hey, we're staunch on it's only going to work in Tampa. Well, that was kind of off into the sunset. We didn't think that was going to happen. But now that's the decision that the Rays have made. What is the big thing for the county commission that they're looking at, the city council, when it comes to the radio silence aspect of it? Do you think things would be different, Colleen, if the Rays were attending some of these meetings, if they were telling him, hey, we went through these different ballparks in Clearwater and Dunedin, and it's not really satisfying what we need to be productive in 2025, and then they go to Steinbrenner Field? Is that one of the biggest things, is that the communication really hasn't been upfront and open?
So that's a good question. And, there's also a bigger, issue at play here of Chris Latvala voted no on the deal. So he's not a fan of the deal at all. His point, and I maybe should have made this point earlier. The commissioners say that, like, if the team were to leave to Hillsborough, the ballpark, the county's portion of the ballpark, right? That $312 million, that's being paid for with bed tax money. That's right. Tourist tax money. That's your surcharge on your hotel bill or your Airbnb, your short-term rental stay. That's what's going and funding the stadium. And the commissioners have made the point that if the Rays leave the county, they're bringing the money that would pay for that new stadium with them. That right. money is leaving the county. So you're not really replenishing the pot that's going to go pay for your new stadium. So that's another sticking point. So I just want to make that point clear, that that's where the money's coming from. And that's kind of like one of the arguments. But the bigger thing here too is that, Chris Latvala doesn't like the deal. Dave Eggers, another county commissioner, doesn't like the deal in general. So it's not exactly, yes, is communication not helping? Yeah, absolutely. But is that kind of like going to be the straw that kind of breaks the camel's back? No, because these are already people who don't right. like the deal as is. And there's going to be 2 new county commissioners who also have major problems with the deal itself. Now, I think the most likely thing that's going to happen on Tuesday is they're probably going to delay the vote again.
Okay.
And what that means for the process, they're already looking at the city. So the agreement that's currently in place, the one from 1995, says that if the dome can't be used because of an act of God, right, a hurricane, the deal would basically suspend itself for a year, basically go on pause, and it would and then it would be extended for 1 more year. In that scenario, it's possible that the new ballpark, if everything goes through, would open then in like 2029, not 2028. Okay. But in the background, also, is City Council going to approve at minimum $57 million to fix right. the trop? A lot of moving pieces here. I know I'm throwing a lot of information,
you're on it.
But I want to just paint a picture of there's a lot of moving pieces. And if one thing goes wrong, it kind of derails other things. But if the commission doesn't vote, if they vote no, then the ballpark is over.
Done.
I mean, that's just done. And that's a major piece, and maybe the simplest piece. I hate to use that word, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then you've got city council. Well, if they don't approve, the renovations to the trop, now some of it's going to be covered by insurance. Out of pocket, it's going to be like $30 million.
Jeez.
And we're talking, this is money that, unlike the county, where it has to go to tourism-related things like beach renourishment or spring training facilities, museums, etc., the city's not in that kind of boat. They could use these funds for other things. So are they going to do that? And what happens if that goes into default? You know what I mean? There's a lot of Jenga pieces that are very loose, and it could pull the whole tower down.
It is a lot of very intricate parts of this entire story. And that's why I have you on, Colleen, because you're very eloquent in kind of describing everything and looking at it from multiple vantage points. Again, I kind of want to go back to like people, and they're getting on Chris Latvala saying like, oh, I can't believe everybody's been going through all these storms and you're just being so staunch against this. I understand he's not a huge fan of the deal anyway, but what do you tell to those people out there that are saying, well, we just got to have the race here anyway. Why can't Pinellas County? Why can't St. Pete? Why can't they just like suck it up for a year? Is it that much of a loss when it comes to, all right, the Rays are going to play in 2025? Because it seems, I'm trying to look at it from all vantage points, right? I'm having Chris on the show on Monday, right? So I'm looking at it for the people that are really pissed right now. And they're just like, how could these people in Pinellas County be so short-sighted and say, oh, well, we're going to vote no because we're not going to have the race for 1 year. When if you do vote yes and you kind of go through with all the plans, you can have them for the next 30 in a bigger ballpark and all the gas plant district and all that money, and everything's going to be so much different. What do you say to those people that are kind of looking at the county and the city and going, hey, you can't, let's balance out the short term and the long term here.
Right. Like you're cutting your nose to spite your 30-year long face or something.
Right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that is, of course, a fair point. It's 1 year of pain, maybe a few years, 2, 3 years of pain for the long term. Yeah, I think that's absolutely rational. The mayor of St. Petersburg, Ken Welch, is, he told me on the record, I think the deal will win out. Like, the right, I'm paraphrasing, but the right economic decision will pair out. But again, these are people who just don't like the deal, period. It's really, yes, they believe that the Rays should stay here. They're here to stay. The point that Commissioner Latvala made was in the new agreement, not the existing one. If there was like another hurricane, an act of God comes through, there's actually provision in there that they first must look in Pinellas and then Hillsborough. And so he's like, why can't they just abide by those terms now? Of course, that's not legally enforceable because we're still under the current agreement. Right. But yeah, the bigger deal is that, again, these are people who just don't like the deal. So like, yes, this might be one sticking point, but they're looking at the 30-year deal and being like, I don't like that either.
Yeah.
So
but
it's a perfect storm that this all came together and that the county commissioners get sworn in immediately, unlike city council, which swears their new people in January.
So those people that were against the deal and the people that are coming in, like this is it's given them some kind of ammunition to, if not say no, but at least pause the deal. So if they, right. So if they pause the deal, Colleen, like if they delay and they say, hey, we're going to vote, like when will that next vote happen? And then what, like the people that are against it and they're going to delay the deal, like, are they just looking up for more reasons to say no down the road? Are they trying to build their case against it? Like, I know you're not them, but it's just weird, right? Are you delaying the inevitable? Are you trying to get more people to come on your side? Like, it's kind of a weird, I'm just trying to see that point of view, that vantage point for something that could certainly help. Yeah, and I understand the act of God and I understand where that money go, but you said it yourself, that's tourist tax, right? So, I mean, for the county there, I mean, it's not like you can use that for something. Well, you can, but I mean, this is the kind of thing that you would think it was for. But yeah, right. I guess so long form, like the delay, when would that next vote happen then?
December. So the two things on the delay. One is that Commissioner Latvala has said, there's been delays on the Rays end. There's been delays on the city's end. So if the county has to delay, they'll delay. Like he's very much like, I'm not going to be rushed. Another point is that the commissioners that are coming in, they're being sworn in Monday night. Less than 24 hours later,
wow.
that would be among the first votes they take. I've had commissioners tell me, I don't think it's very fair that they come in and have to weigh in immediately on something that could decide the next 30 years, right? So they might, just to give those commissioners grace, give them time to kind of digest that. The next meeting would be in December. I want to say it's December 15th, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
I believe that was the date floated, but yeah, we're not looking like, oh, it'll just be the next week. No, it'll be in December. Also, the city council votes on their bonds on Thursday. So other,
are they going to
also in the background.
Do you think they'll follow suit? Like, is it one of those things where let's say the vote gets delayed on Tuesday, the city council probably won't. Are they going to vote? Like, it'd be kind of weird if they delay. Like, they're not going to say yes, or what vantage point do they have? Because they could do one of two things, in my opinion. They could say, all right, well, we're going to delay because the county delayed, or they could say yes and be like, hey, we're holding up our end of the bargain. You need to pick it up, county.
It's a great question. It's the $1 million question. Right. I've been told that we're just going to see what the county does.
Yeah.
Like I want to give you a better answer, but frankly, it can go in like 5 different directions. I mean, because again, this on the city side, not funds that are restricted to a certain use. In St. Petersburg during the storms, they had to shut down water, waste treatment facilities twice. For Helene and for Milton. There's flooded houses, infrastructure is poor. I mean, there's a lot going on. Things are different. Like they're just different now. What the city council will do, I don't know. I mean, it could go so many ways. And if there was no hurricane, we'd be done by now.
Yeah, you're right. And that's the thing too. That's part of it. As much as we say, all right, this things have changed, but I'm biased. I'm a sports guy. I want to see the new stadium here, but I also have a ton of friends that live in Pinellas County.
Hmm.
And their lives were like changed in such a huge way because of these storms. Guys that like they lost everything. So how can you tell people like that, like, hey, let's put money that we could help to drainage, or we can help you get back on your feet. Let's give it to a baseball stadium, right? It's almost, you feel a little guilty, right? It's almost like a survivor's guilt kind of thing of like, don't worry about your life being turned upside down. We need baseball. Because at the end of the day, you're only concerned with what's in front of you, right? You're concerned of a roof over your head, food on the table for your family. I mean, as much as you would love, even if you're a big baseball fan, to have a new stadium, 30 years, the gas plant district, like you have to take care of your own household first.
Yeah.
That's kind of the nervousness about the entire thing for people that were affected so heavily by the storm, whether they're a sports fan or not. I want to ask you about the Rays, though. That's kind of like one thing that's kind of stuck in my craw a little bit is even before all this happened, the radio silence from the Rays after the deals went through is something that's kind of rubbing me the wrong way. Even before the hurricanes, like what was their interaction with the city and the county? Because it just seems like they were working in such good faith. And we know Ken Welch is like, he's been one of the big spearheads of this entire deal. What is that relationship like been with the kind of the local government and the Rays? Because it's kind of weird that it's been radio silence from them.
You know, I feel like the city and the county are also like being treated differently. Like
Okay. In what way?
city council members have been in touch with, Ray's front office, this week having a one-on-one phone calls. I'm hearing some county commissioners didn't hear about even their decision to go to Steinbrenner until like a half an hour before our story broke.
Wow.
And that's reported. I'm pointing to my own reporting.
Right, right.
So I don't know why there's a difference in communication. That's a great question. I don't know, and I get it that, I know a lot of people who work for the Rays have had their own homes flood, and are dealing with their own personal thing. Obviously their offices are all messed up.
Right.
There's a lot going on, and there's a lot to figure out, right? Especially with, the new season 2025 right around the corner. It's a lot to put together. But yeah, I don't know what's going on. I can't answer that. I'm sorry. I don't have like a very good answer for you.
Listen,
But I just know that there's a discrepancy between how they
Right.
treated city council members and how they treated county commissioners.
Listen, if you don't know, then that's a problem because you are in the know. And I don't look at it as like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. I look at it as if you and you're on the beat and you're just everywhere and you always have all this information. And make sure you follow her on Twitter/X at Colleen_Wright. Tampa Bay Times, of course, we're talking a lot about, especially with me not being at DA, supporting local. Support the Tampa Bay Times, tampabay.com. Go check them out because this is what our community needs. We need people like Colleen out there doing the dirty work and making sure that we're kept abreast of this entire situation. Colleen, I mean, it's just been it's been wild. So, I mean, thank you so much for joining me today. Did I catch it? Did I get everything? Did I leave anything out? Did you leave anything out?
No, I mean, I'm always racking my head and every time I log off, I'm like, oh man, I should have made that point. But
yeah, you'll text me like, I forgot this part. I'm like, it's fine. We'll have you on again.
I think next week is going to be very telling.
Right.
And I just want to make also the point that even people who are so pro the Rays deal, Brandy Gabbard, city council member Brandy Gabbard, unwavering in her support for the new deal, was very clear that this doesn't affect her support on the deal. But she was even hesitant to approve $6 million just to get waterproofing started for the truck. Because how could you do that when people are hurting? It's very complicated. I think it's almost a little bit emotional. Not saying she's emotional. I'm just saying that personal things are going on.
Sensitive, yeah.
It's very sensitive, and there's just a lot of moving parts. And I do think that next week is going to be very telling, and the clock is ticking. And even as these delays go on, costs go up. Things get so like some of the formula may change, and like it kind of just spins everything else out. So even from now to 2 hours, I'm gonna have like new information. It's just gonna keep going. But next week, I think we're gonna maybe get some more answers or maybe get a better feel on things.
Wonderful. Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. You are the best. I appreciate your time. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks for, glad to see you keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate it. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you. The one and only Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. What a crazy story, man. What a crazy situation. We're going to keep the good vibes going. We're going to bring in one of my good pals and one of the greatest Tampa Bay Rowdies of all time, the one and only Leo Fernandes. My brother, what is going on?
I'm good, man. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course, man. This is like, I had like an introductory show on Monday, and my guy Ian Beckles was on there. I guess this is kind of like what the format's going to look like for the Recher podcast, with just we're going to flow it all show long. Lightning talk with Erik Erlendsson, local stuff with Colleen Wright, and then we're here with you talking some Tampa Bay Rowdy soccer and what you've been up to. First off, congratulations, re-ing up for next year. You and your buddy Lewis Hilton, your roommate, when you guys travel on the road. I mean, how cool is that to be able to share that with him, and kind of what went into the thought process of coming back again next season?
I think for myself personally, it was a very up and down season. Just dealing with little minor setbacks from, the big injury in 2023. So I feel like I still have a lot in the tank, and I still have to do what I can do to help Tampa really win that championship. And I think, we've done so many good things since my time here, and I think the only thing that I haven't done is win that USL Cup.
And what about Lewis coming back with you, man? I know how much he means to you.
Yeah, super happy. I mean, he's one of those guys that you love to have him on your team. He wants the ball every single time. He works so hard. He's probably still the fittest guy in the league. So, you need guys like that in the locker room. You need players like that. So, and especially he's such a close friend of mine. So it's really good.
I mean, I know it was such a stop and start year. We've talked about this a lot for you, coming back from injury and then, taking some time off. What about where you fit kind of into the lineup because I saw some of the schemes, like when you started in the starting lineup. I saw you kind of playing, it looked like you were playing number 10, then it looked like another game you were playing up front. Like, what was that whole process like, kind of figuring out where to play with Cal and Manu, because they played together pretty much all year long?
Yeah, I think, we played with two forwards all year. So it was trying to fit me in that center attacking mid role, also number 8 role. So it was a little bit, I want to say challenging, but it just took some time to get used to. And then it's tough because you have two really good forwards, and all you want to do is get them the ball and try to make them get the goals and keep them dangerous. So for me, it was really just trying to impact the game in other ways and trying to help them succeed as much as they did in the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, I look at this team, and it was such a funky season, kind of a stop and start. You lose Forrest so early on, and he's such a huge part of your team. And listen, I thought the back line did a pretty good job. Jordan Farr, one of the best goalies in the entire league, helped you win that first playoff game. But to get Forrest back for next season, I just feel like this is kind of the season where hell, we're not even in 2025 yet. But yeah. I feel like with you coming back and Lewis coming back, and hopefully, I'm hearing Forrest is coming back. I mean, to get that, I feel like you just kind of put everything together. I feel like 2025 is like you guys are going to be rearing and getting right back to the top of the Eastern Conference standings.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, every year that I've been here, we want to be in the first place, second place in the Eastern Conference and fight for that trophy. So I don't see why next year will be any different. Obviously, we're going to have another year under our belt, away from injuries and all the stop and goes, that what happened this year. And then also with our new coach, he's finally seen what this league is about, the travel and how difficult it can be playing on the road sometimes. So he'll have more experience in that part. So I think all positive signs going into next year.
You mentioned the travel. I mean, what was that like? Obviously, the storms, you guys couldn't play at Al Lang the last couple of weeks there. What was that like playing down at IMG, being on the road? Because it's something that, like, obviously we deal with, like, personally, right? You deal with your home and your wife and your kids and stuff like that. But as a professional athlete, being able to, like, you have to go somewhere else. Like, what was that transition like, and how do you think the team handled it overall?
Yeah, I think overall, it was good. It's never easy to break your routine and play elsewhere, and I think we found that out when we had to basically not play at Al Lang for the last month and a half or 2 months, whatever it was, and it was difficult. Even though we were going to IMG, it was only 45-minute drive, but everything was different. We weren't taking our normal routes to work. So we would get on the bus from Waters, and we would have to go all the way to IMG together. So
Wow.
we're eating a little bit different, we're drinking a little bit different. So it was tough, but I think just the fact that we were playing in our area again helped a lot. So guys, dealt with it pretty well. I wish it wasn't as tough as it was, but
Right.
it's part of life. You got to move forward.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then, what's like the last couple of days been like for you when the season's over and it's got to be tough because you get that routine, you're in the regular season, especially you've been working to get back. I mean, it seems like for the last 12 to 18 months, all you've been doing is trying to work and get back into game shape to make sure that you're 100% healthy. What is it like when the season's over and you kind of have to dial it back down?
Yeah, that's the worst part for me. And I think, like you said, I think these last like 7 weeks, I was finally feeling like myself again. Finally played and started consecutive games in forever, it felt like. So, and I think my body was finally catching up and finally feeling good again. And that's the worst part. Now that the season's over, it's like, all right, now I got to dial it back a little bit, but then make sure that I keep in shape and ready to go in the middle of January. And I think with soccer, it's good because the off season is not too long.
Right.
We get a month and a half, 2-month break, and then we're back in the grind again. So for me, it's really just trying to stay, where I'm at right now. Obviously, not go too hard, and just stay in a good place and be ready for next year.
Yeah, and you got 2 little ones that you can go chase around, so that's how you can keep your stamina up there too, buddy.
Exactly, man. I'm coaching the little one now, the 7-year-old.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm just because I'm gonna be out there anyway. So I was like, I might as well just help him out.
I love that, and we've seen that the last couple of years. I remember, I learned a couple of years ago when Jan Ekra was out there, and it's just that's the one thing that about the Rowdies I don't know if a lot of people know unless you like really follow the team really closely is that it's not just you guys practicing and playing on Saturdays. Like you guys do a lot when it comes to the youth and coaching some of these youth teams as well.
Yeah, I mean, Jan is one of those because he has 2 daughters, so he was involved early. And I think like when you're there, you're going to practice anyway. You're going to watch your kid. You might as well help everybody else and like give them some drills and give them some talks and some tips. So that's my goal. Like I want to go out there and make sure that little Leo's doing the right things and learning the right way and falling in love with the game that I fell in love with and making sure that everyone else is having a good time too.
Rowdy star Leo Fernandes join us here on the J Recher podcast. I just saw the video that the Rowdies put out on social media, the blooper reel. Of course, it starts with you trying to walk in the door like that. It's just 2 minutes of just hilarity. One thing, and I just saw the video that was put out yesterday with everybody's like the fastest or the what it seems like you guys are a tight-knit group. I mean, sometimes you can say that and like it doesn't come across, but being around you guys, watching you guys practice and then seeing it on social media, like you guys really do get along off the pitch too.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a really good locker room this year. A lot of good bonds that we've made. And I think this is the hardest time of the year because we're not, most of us, I mean, some of us aren't going to be in the locker room again.
Right.
We might never see them again. We might see them, just playing against them. So it's a tough time of the year. And yeah, last night we had like an end of the year dinner with everybody. So it was a good time just to see everybody for the last time before everyone, goes back to their either hometown or, just go for their vacation or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I see. And just kind of looking internationally now, we're in the middle of the international break. U.S. men's soccer won last night against Jamaica. And, how have you seen, people ask me too, because they're so excited about the World Cup coming up. And obviously Mauricio Pochettino is the new head coach. That's a big name. I mean, obviously you coach in Chelsea, you coach in PSG, Tottenham to the Champions League final years ago. What do you see as far as the growth? I mean, in your time since you've been playing here professionally, the growth over the last decade or so for when it comes to the U.S. team?
For the U.S. team, it's been, I would say it's up and down, right? Mm-hmm. We got out. I feel like we had a good World Cup, got out of the group, and then we lost in almost the same place that we always lose,
Right.
And then that year and a half, I feel like it kind of went stale. We didn't really make any improvements. We had a really bad Copa America. And then change was made, and I feel like it was necessary. And just to watch the U.S. now, I think everyone is a little bit more on edge, and you can see there's a little bit more intensity. And that game last night, it was a tough game just because Jamaica is super athletic, good team, good players, and to go over there and get a win, get a shutout is an impressive victory. So hopefully they just keep at it and keep getting these wins, because I mean we're not in qualifiers, so that's tough. So you can't really judge performances off that. So they got to keep winning these little gritty matches away from home, because I think when they play at home, no matter what, they always perform, they always win. So it's really the road games that are crucial.
And for those tuning in, the U.S. does not have to play in those World Cup qualifiers because they are the host of the World Cup coming up in a couple of years. So they're definitely in no matter what. I want to ask you something that's going on in England right now with Harry Kane. He captain of the English squad, one of the greatest goal scorers that we've ever seen. He's coming out because there's a lot of guys that have pulled out of the England squad during this international break, picking up little knocks, little injuries here or there. And he's come out and just said, like, England is more important to me than playing for my club. And that's tough to hear from this side of the pond, because we don't necessarily have that same buy-in. Maybe soccer, I think it's soccer, hockey in that order, but the other three sports when it comes to basketball, baseball, and football, not that international play is big unless you're talking about the Olympics or possibly the World Baseball Classic, but these guys are looking at their $100 million contracts and they're going, I'm not going to risk not playing for the Lakers or the Yankees or the Cowboys because, for my country. But it's totally different when it comes to soccer, and especially in other parts of the world outside of, I would even say outside of the US, not just outside of North America, because I feel like the Mexican players, they take a lot of pride in playing, for their country. Have you seen that change at all? Do you think that'll ever change in the US? Because it is a little bit different, because when you look at it, I don't know if you could say, other than Christian Pulisic, who plays for AC Milan, I don't know if any of those guys are considered top tier international players. But just talk about that difference between, in this country, club versus country, than what you've seen, like, in Brazil or Argentina or England, Germany, something like that.
Yeah, I think, growing up, obviously I was born in Brazil, but I grew up in New York. When you watching these soccer players play for their national team, it's completely different. It's like what they were born to do, and it's what they want to do. They'd rather win a World Cup with their country than win the league in their club.
Right.
So I think for them it's just like something that's built in their culture, that they want to die on the field for their country. So it's something a little bit too drastic, but that's how I've always seen it, and that's how all the Brazilian players feel. Like when they get called to the national team, it's like the highest honor that you can get. So they drop everything and go and play their hearts out for the national team.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the Brazilian team, because for years, like, it was just like they were untouchable. And of course, we know of like there's just so many great players. I just saw Rafinha got given the number 10, and we know how Neymar was wearing that number for a very long time. But it seems like they're in a weird spot when it comes to Brazil, right? Looking at the last in the Copa, and a guy like Casemiro wasn't in it, who's obviously had his struggles at Manchester United, but this is a guy that was a stalwart in that midfield for a very long time. Where do you see kind of the next couple of years for the Brazilian national team? Because obviously, and I know it hurts a lot of Brazilian, the world champs are Argentinians, and you of course have Leo Messi and Emi Martinez and guys like that. I mean, where is kind of the status of Brazil football right now?
That's a great question. I think when I look at it now, it's like, Brazil was always on top, and everybody was trying to get to Brazil's level. Right. Now I feel like Brazil hasn't really gone better or gone higher. Everybody else is also caught up. So like there are no more easy games, even in qualifiers for the World Cup for Brazil. That's why they're struggling. They're in like 4th or 5th place right now. And then also we don't have that player anymore. We don't have Neymar. Without Neymar, you see how they're struggling. They can't even beat Venezuela last night. So we don't have that superstar that they've always had, like Neymar, Ronaldinho, Kaká, Ronaldo. So they're missing that player that gets everybody together. Right now they have a bunch of like good players, that play in the Premier League, play in the Serie A, but they don't have that one true superstar that takes them over the edge. Like Argentina does with Messi, or Portugal has with all the Bruno Fernandes and Bernardo. Like Brazil is just missing that one key attacking player. Rafinha's been unbelievable this start of this season, so he's been really good. But Vinny doesn't really turn up like he does in Real Madrid,
which is wild, because there's people that think Vinicius Jr. should have won the Ballon d'Or. They gave it to Rodri because obviously Man City is still I know he's out now, but he wins the Ballon d'Or and Vinicius Jr. doesn't win it. But I mean, when he plays for Real Madrid, I mean, he's dynamite there.
He's different.
It is, and it's different too. I mean, I look at Madrid now; they're not playing as well as a lot of people have thought. I mean, you have Jude Bellingham there, you have Vinicius Jr., but you bring in Kylian Mbappe. What does that mean when you bring in? Because you could argue that they had the two best left wingers in the world. You bring in Mbappe, that's his best position. Now he's playing. It looks like he's playing up front, keeping Vinny on the left. But what does that mean in soccer or football when you have two guys that are playing in the same spot? That are like, it's not so easy. People go, "Oh, just go out there and play. It shouldn't be a big deal," but it is a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tough. I think if looking at it, it's like you knew this guy's best position was left winger. You saw it didn't work out when Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe were trying to play together because they all wanted to play. Well, Neymar and Mbappe wanted to play left winger, and Messi was just playing as a 10. So Real Madrid, I mean, they think it's still going to work. They want him to play as a 9. I just don't understand why Mbappe doesn't want to play as a 9. It's like he's probably the fastest player on the field. You're going to get more goals as a 9 than as a left winger. But
what is the hesitation? Because I see that with like Marcus Rashford too for Man U. He loves playing out wide, out to the left. He doesn't like the 9. Is it the physicality, knowing that you're probably going to catch some punishment from those center backs? Is it, sometimes you have to make these runs to get in behind guys and you don't always get service? Like, what is that? Because I'm with you. I look at like number 9. You think of the classic number 9s. You're going to score a bunch of goals. Everybody's trying to feed you. But is it really just the dirty work sometimes that guys that just don't? Because usually out wide, like you get the ball and it's like, hey, you're going to probably go one-on-one. You're almost like a point guard in basketball.
Yeah.
But when you're a number 9, sometimes I think, maybe you're doing work for others, or maybe it's more of a physical battle. What do you see in that spot?
Yeah. The one thing that I can think of is they don't want to just stay up high in between the center backs or whatever the case may be. They want to drop down. They want to get touches on the ball. They want to be the playmaker. But sometimes as a 9, you see Haaland does it all the time. He hangs out up top. Sometimes he might not touch the ball for 30, 40 minutes. And everyone's like, oh, why is Haaland not doing anything? He's like, he's doing what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to, hang out right by the center backs and then make that 5-yard sprint, get the goals, get the tap.
Some guys don't like that, right? Because you see Harry Kane at times for Bayern Munich and did it at Tottenham. Sometimes he'll come back and he'll be like, he'll have the ball behind the center midfielder. I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? Yeah. I can see that as a winger going, well, I don't want to go 25 minutes of game action and not touch the ball.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it also depends on the coach. Like for me, it's like if the 9 is dropping in to get touches, your wingers have to make that run in behind.
Right.
So it's tough to tell Vinny and Mbappe what to do. Those guys are world-class players. So I'm sure they're going to figure it out. Mbappe is one of the best players in the world. He's not going to be he's going to score over 20 goals this year no matter what position he plays.
They might get theirs, but it could hurt them team-wise, right? Like you said, PSG on paper, you're like, how does this front 3 not work? I mean, we've seen front 3s in the past, especially I think you look at Barcelona, you look at Liverpool. Liverpool was so unique years ago where they didn't have a traditional number 9 with Roberto Firmino, but when you have Sadio Mane on one side and Mo Salah on the other, you're like, wow, you can drop deep, let those guys run in behind.
Exactly.
You don't always win. You know this better than most. Like, you don't always win just because you have the better team on paper. There's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah. Players have to be bought in. Players have to like each other. It's super important.
What's your plan, I guess, for the next couple of weeks outside of soccer? Just relaxing, chilling, holiday plans? What do you got going on?
I'm going to Disney next weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got forced into going to Disney.
Boy.
The kids are excited, so happy about that. We are for Christmas we're going to New York just to see family for a couple days.
Nice.
Maybe catch a Knicks game. If it's not too expensive.
I'll be up there in December, man. So we'll definitely have to get together and we'll do something with the kids, brother. We appreciate your time, and the one and only Leo Fernandes, one of the great stars of our Tampa Bay Rowdies. I appreciate you, my brother. Give my love to the family, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
You got it, pal. All right, moving from soccer/football to the cage to the octagon, the one and only Billy Quarantillo joining us on the program. Billy Q, my guy, it's been a while, brother. How you doing?
I know, Jay. What's up, brother? I just got done sparring, so I'm a little
Look at that face.
I know, but hey, we got to put the work in. We got a huge fight coming up. Once again, thanks for having me, Tampa OG Jay, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Bro, I cannot tell you when I saw the word that you were fighting, not only in Tampa, but who you were fighting. Cub Swanson, because I've covered a bunch of his fights too, and I'm like, bro, this is such a good fight for you. Bro, this is a guy, like, Cub is one of those guys where I think, and you'll totally get this, there's guys in UFC history that have never won a belt, and it doesn't matter. They're an OG, they're a legend, they leave it all out there. It doesn't matter. They fought title contenders, it don't matter. To get that call that was the guy you were going to fight in Tampa, right? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so to describe what my wife said, because like I got the call from my manager Matt Arroyo, and I heard her talking to someone after, and she's like, "Well, we're married with 2 kids," and she's like, "I've never seen Billy this happy in his life." So when my manager called me, he's like, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, and usually he doesn't do stuff like that. He's like, "Are you ready?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What is it?" He's like, "UFC Tampa," and I was already like. I'm like, I don't give a shit who it is. Like, right. And then he's like, Cub Swans. And I was like, are you joking? I'm like, yeah, dude. I'm like, I don't know if the UFC is, I don't know if they know that they did me this huge favor, because obviously it's a super tough fight. But man, it was, I've been watching Cub Swanson literally my entire career. I knew who he was before I even started training MMA. I've seen most of his fights. He's in the Hall of Fame. So to fight a current UFC Hall of Famer in my backyard, I'm at my gym right now, Gracie Pack. We're about 20-30 minutes away from the arena. Wow. It's just, a dream come true. And it's just, just my belief and hard work really does pay off.
Yeah. I mean, at this stage of his career, they're not going to put him in with just anybody. So, I mean, to me, it just shows the confidence that the UFC has in you. Not just that you're going to, you're going to be able to cut weight. You're going to show up on fight night and be able to. It just, I think that it's deeper than that, right? Like, it's like there's a trust, and we've seen that over the years with fighters that they don't trust, and it's like, well, I don't know. You have backup fighters, and you don't get. I mean, you're going to be on the main card. You're fighting a guy like Cub Swanson. Like, this is a big deal. So personally, I was jacked up. I was so happy for you, because you definitely deserve it, my man. And how do you train for a guy like Cub? Because is it one of those things? Are you a guy that watches a ton of tape, or do you focus more on you? Because I feel like a guy that's so well-rounded, that's been around for so long, sometimes it might be a little paralysis by analysis. You watch too many fights and you try to pick out some of the stuff, and it's just, he's a mixed martial artist, man. You just got to go out there and do your thing.
Yeah, man. And we're both at the point. I think this is his 25th UFC fight, which is crazy. This is my 11th UFC fight. So we both have a ton of footage on us. I'm one of those guys that I like to watch a little bit, and then I just leave it at that. Like, and I don't need to watch his fights from, 10, 15 years ago. I watched his last few fights. To me, he hasn't really lost a step, man. He's going to be, I think he's 41 now. If not, he's going to be 41 by the time we fight. I'm going to be 36, but I think I have way less miles. Again, I wasn't even I was watching him fight in the WEC.
Oh, man. How great was the WEC, Billy?
Oh, incredible, man. Incredible. So to answer your question, I've watched his last few fights, and again, he can hang with the best guys in the featherweight division still. I know that he fought at bantamweight a few fights ago, so I think I'm going to have a little bit of a size advantage. I'm making sure my speed is on point. We just got done doing a bunch of really hard rounds, and it's just, there's really no – everyone's asking about, like, the pressure this, pressure that. Man, it's anytime I'm fighting in UFC Tampa, it's going to be a huge fight, and it's a lot more motivating this fight than, at the UFC Apex, where it was kind of hard to get up for that one.
Yeah, it's definitely a special venue there at Amalie Arena. I was there last night for the Lightning games. There's just so many. I mean, it's just wild to think of all the events that I've watched at Amalie Arena. Can't wait to check you out there December 14th at Amalie Arena. We've got a big event tomorrow night, UFC 309. I'm an OG fan, a guy I've been covering this sport. I've been watching since the beginning. I don't know if there's a better fighter that I've ever seen than John Jones, because the IQ is something that not enough people talk about. The way that he's able to kind of change his game plan in the fight, kickboxing, boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, like he does judo, like he's just everything. Those teep kicks that he has, like he's just that guy that you look at and you go, who the hell's going to beat that guy? My question to you, does Stipe have, because he's got the heart of a lion, heart of a champion. He's like the everyman's man, right? The firefighter. Does he have what it takes to beat John Jones, do you think, tomorrow night? Because it's tough for me to see a scenario, especially with Jones coming in a little bit lighter of a weight. Love to hear what he had to say. Like, I have to be versatile in this fight. That's the way I'm going to beat Stipe. And I think that's where he has him, that the skill, maybe the athleticism, and he can be a kickboxer, right? He can be a jiu-jitsu guy. In what scenario does Stipe win this fight? Because I think it's going to be a tall task.
Yeah, it's a really tall task, and part of me thinks a lot of people are writing Stipe off, and he's had so many good fights. I just watched all of his highlights the other day of all the finishes, beating Francis, beating Alistair Overeem, and all these big fights. But with that being said, I'm the same way, man. Like John Jones was one of those guys that he was a champion at 21 years old. I didn't even get into the UFC until I was 30 years old. So he's just been doing it at the highest level, and I follow him on Instagram. He's been training with Gabe Stevenson,
wow.
probably the best wrestlers in the world, and then also Gordon Ryan, he's easily the best jiu-jitsu guy in the world. So he's taking this fight extremely seriously. It's not like he's just like, oh yeah, I'm just coming back. He's training with the best guys in the world and two of the best grapplers in the world. So I think he's going to try to get this fight to the ground. I think he's probably going to be able to, which I hate to say that. I think it's going to be I think he's a big favorite for a reason. Actually 1 year ago, right around now, I actually saw Stipe out. We did like a big UFC party in New York.
Nice.
And he's just the coolest guy, man. So I do feel for him, and I'm happy that I'm sure they're both getting a big payday. MSG is going to tax him like crazy, unfortunately, in New York. I know that from fighting in New York. They do. They get their lick off you too. But I'm happy that they're both getting a huge payday. And yeah, I think it's going to be I think Stipe's only chance is if John decides to stand with him and Stipe catches him. But I just don't see why John would do that. And when he mixes up with his reach, with his kicks, he just has a lot more weapons. And again, with the guys he's been training with, the guys he's been grappling with, I just don't think Stipe can compete with those guys.
I'm with you, because I feel like Stipe's path to victory is the way that he beat DC, right? You got to get on the inside, make the adjustment, maybe the hook here. But if you're Jones, I mean, one thing that he's always been able to do is use that size to his advantage. Like I mentioned, the teep kick, if he's got to use the jab, like he's the intelligence, man, the fight IQ. You mentioned MSG. I was at the first event at MSG with McGregor against Eddie Alvarez, and just to be in the building for that, to see how many Irish people flew in for that fight. Like, it was crazy, man. And it was just, as a kid that grew up on Long Island like myself, like it was just really cool to see that. Then I took the red eye home to go to the Bucks game the next day. I slept all night because it was freaking nuts. But that's what the UFC is, man. The MMA world. I want to ask you about the co-main event with Oliveira and Chandler. Like, these are two scary dudes too, man. And this is one of those where this is certainly, in my opinion, not as easy to call as the Jones Stipe fight. But that division, man, the lightweight division, you just don't know, man. Like, you don't know what's going to happen on any given night. How do you see that one shaking out?
Yeah, it's super exciting, man. And if you watched the first fight, which I'm sure you did, Chandler had a lot of success early, man. He was picking him apart, and he's one of those guys that he throws caution to the wind, and he's trying to take you out early. That's why everyone loves him. I think he has like probably like a 500 record in the UFC, but he's just a much watched TV, co-main event, either main event or co-main event, pretty much every fight. So it's going to be an exciting fight, and I agree with you. That one's more of a toss-up fight. Because, throughout Oliveira's career, he's had some great performances. Then he's had some not so great performances. And Chandler being on the sidelines, that could be a benefit, or that could be a negative. Maybe a little bit of ring rust, but he's also well-rounded. He's focused. He was getting ready for the biggest fight of his career with Conor McGregor. I know he trains at Kill Cliff, which I've been to before. It's an outstanding gym. Henry Hoof is one of the best minds in MMA. So man, I really, gun to my head, I would have to go Oliveira, but man, it's just been such an exciting fight. I've met Chandler a few times. Just an awesome guy. Both of our wives' are named Bree, and I've met her before. It's hard to bet against him. But man, that's just gonna be a super exciting fight, and I can't wait for that one.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that about Oliveira because you saw him come up and you're like, wow, this kid, the kickboxing, the jujitsu, but it just never seemed like he was going to get over the hump. And then all of a sudden, like he goes on this run, you're like, oh, wow, okay. Well, like he put it all together. And it's like rewarding to watch a young guy. And it just looks like, all right, it may be a little bit more flash and dash than the guy that's going to be able to put it all together. And he did. And you mentioned Chandler. If you're in that position, do you still wait for Conor? Like it seemed like he's been waiting for Conor forever, right? Like you got to get back in the octagon at some time. I mean, everybody wants to see that fight, but he had to get it back in there, right? Eventually, you can't sit there. He would have been 50 years old by the time Conor agrees to this damn fight. Jeez.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was the right time for him to come back, and a great matchup for him. It's a winnable fight, and they were starting to make the memes. They're like Chandler versus McGregor, and they both have like gray hair. They both look super old, and you definitely feel for him, man, because they kept announcing the fight, and Conor was just doing his own thing, and it doesn't. Who knows if that fight's ever going to happen? Most people don't think Conor's ever going to fight again in the UFC, so we'll see what happens. But I think it was a good move for him to finally come back. Probably could have done it sooner, but it's with the amount of money that I heard he was going to make, like 10 times his usual pay.
Yeah.
If he did fight and just his celebrity and his status, it would have went through the roof. But I think the time was up where he needs to get back in there and fight.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think he waited the amount of time that he needed to wait. Like, all right, nobody could say you punked out. Nobody could say like you were impatient. Like you waited, gave it a long amount of time. Then it's like, all right, I can't sit there and wait for a payday from this guy. Like if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. What's going to happen tonight is a weird fight. I know you just put something out on social about it last night. Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. I mean, Mike Tyson just slapped the hell out of him yesterday. I saw that he stepped on his foot and then he slapped the bejesus out of him. What is your take what's your take on this fight? And then I want to ask you about your take on Jake and Logan Paul, because I look at it in a way where these guys are out there, they're training their ass off. They may not be at the level of their professional fighters, but they're fighting, they're doing training camps and things like that. So they're tougher than my ass, that's for sure. But first off, give me your opinion on Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, because man, I mean, Jesus, guy's damn near 60 years old. But in the back of your head, man, I mean, we all grew up on those videos, Billy. We grew up on Mike Tyson knocking people out in the first round. So it's hard to just completely ignore that,
Yeah, I think that's the thing, man. Like it was pretty genius marketing, and they're doing it for free on Netflix. So I know everyone in the world is going to watch that fight tonight. It's Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson punch out, knocking everyone out. It's like that nostalgia for everyone. Anyone, 35 and up, they remember the Mike Tyson just literally knocking everyone out, having those crazy fights with Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield. With that being said, though, he's 58 years old. I know at 35, some days I'm like, holy crap, I can't believe I'm still doing this. Right. So to get him back at 35, and again, anytime fighters are getting paid, I'm happy for them. I just don't see how he's going to be able to win unless he just, it's still a fight, so he could still knock him out. Anything can happen. Who knows what happens behind the scenes if it's more beneficial for Jake to take a dive or something like that.
Handshake agreement,
a rematch. By the time he's 60, they do a rematch. And boxing's been known to be a little corrupt sometimes.
Right.
So I don't know, man. I think it's cool that they're doing it. I'm not like hating against like, oh, they shouldn't do this. Like no one's gonna tell me when I can't fight. So it's Mike's decision. So I'm happy that they're doing it, and it's going to bring a lot of eyes to combat sports, which I think is, raises the level for anyone. With that being said about Jake and Logan, I just think they're incredibly talented with how they promote themselves. Right. I saw the press conference the other day, and someone mentioned, they're like, it was a pretty boring press conference. No one was really selling the fight. And then Jake Paul gets up and he starts trying to bet everyone, and they're starting to talk smack. And then, of course, Mike Tyson smacks him, which that was probably set up too. Yeah. They do a good job selling it, because if Mike Tyson doesn't slap him and if Jake doesn't act like a maniac at the press conference, it's not as exciting. You know what I mean? And Mike Tyson having someone else take his clothes off, and he's wearing the Versace underwear. It's a show, man. And the same way Dana White is the best promoter in the world. Jake Paul does a really good job of, you either love him or hate him, but you're going to watch him. And I'm definitely going to watch tonight. I'm hoping that it'd be cool to see Mike actually hurt him.
I know.
But it might be kind of sad watching Jake just beat him up, because it's like watching like your uncle that he shouldn't be in there, but again, we're all gonna watch and we're all gonna talk about it after, so it'll be cool. It'll be pretty cool, a cool event.
Yeah, I watched I went back the other day and I watched Evander Holyfield versus Vitor Belfort, and I just don't want it to be like that, where he's taking shots, and like Vitor looks like he could still fight for the middleweight crown. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, I don't want to see that aspect. Just give me something. Obviously, 14-ounce gloves, they bumped it up. It's only 2-minute rounds, so they kind of help, but it's still a pro fight, right? It's, as long as Mike passes the test, right? I know he's older. We don't expect him to see, him going in there in his prime, but if he passes all the tests, who am I to say, right? They're the athletic commission for a reason. But you as a professional fighter, and I've always had this conversation with people because they'll say, Jay, you're a boxing fan, you're an MMA fan, you've been doing this. How could you support or agree with what Logan and Jake Paul are doing? I look at it like this, Billy, and I want your opinion. It's entertainment, right? Everybody's always so worried about the sanctity and like, oh, you're dishonoring the name. Like, this person should do this. And you have the MMA rankings, the UFC rankings, and sometimes the first fighter fights the eighth fighter. You know why? Because it's a more entertaining fight. Styles make fights, right? Give me something. If I'm taking an hour, 2-3 hours out of my day to watch something, I want to be entertained. I don't want to see, oh, they gave it a good old college try. I'm trying to be entertained. But from your perspective, a guy that's been grinding, and then you see these guys that kind of go about it their own way and they get paid, 10, 12, 15 times as much of like maybe a main card in the UFC. How do you answer those questions to people that are say like they're violating the sanctity of boxing and MMA?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but at the same time, like, I understand it. I grew up watching pro wrestling, and I get like the heel and like
bro, you see the shirt?
Yeah, hell yeah! Did I see that the WrestleMania? Hell yeah! The Ultimate
Macho Man would have turned 72 today.
Oh man!
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's and so I get that. Most of the fans, we forget. Like, some people forget, most of the fans are hardworking people that work day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them want to just either throw some bets around, or they just want to be entertained. They want to have a few beers and watch some people try to kill each other. I remember one of the things that actually brought me to Tampa. I was visiting my sister years ago. And it was starting to brew in my head a little bit what I wanted to do. And we actually went to a bar, and I wish I knew what bar it was. I think it was in St. Petersburg. And it was the Oscar De La Hoya. It was the Oscar De La Hoya versus Floyd Mayweather boxing match. Wow. I think it was in like 2007. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, like, there was hundreds of people at this bar. It was overflowing. There was, a lot of people for Oscar, a lot of people for Floyd Mayweather. And they just had like this crazy boxing match. It was, one of the highest grossing boxing matches ever. And I just remember like looking around, and everyone was so glued to it. Everyone was drinking, having fun, arguing with each other, betting and doing all this stuff. And later that night, we ended up walking back to our hotel, and I'm walking back, and like, it was probably in like, I don't remember when it was, but it was like really hot out, and I wasn't used to that in growing up in Buffalo. Yeah. And I was like, man, like, that was so cool. Like, I want to be that guy that like, that's on TV that everyone gets to like take a break from their real life from. And that was one of like the big moments where I was like, you know what, like, why can't I? Like, what's stopping me? Like, what's stopping me from moving down here and training and trying to be that guy that people can get away from their 9-to-5 from and be the entertainer. So that'll always, boxing will always have a special place in my heart. And especially just being that entertainer, I'll never hate on, if it's an exciting matchup, if someone sells a fight, I get what they're doing. So I'll always support that.
Speaking of the OGs from Orchard Park, I can't let you leave before we talk about your Bills, brother. Going into the season, people were asking like, all right, where do you see them? Because, you lose Diggs, you lose some of the guys on defense, but your guys have been balling, man. What has it been like following this team this year? They've really put a good count on themselves. And, if they keep doing their thing, it's going to be tough to – I know Lamar Jackson and some of these other guys, but I've just been so impressed by Josh Allen and the job that he's done this year.
Yeah, man, he's him, man. And that's, success is the best revenge. Everyone, was questioning, is it Josh Allen? Is it Diggs? And I remember Diggs had like a famous quote that someone was like, you think Diggs, basically they were like, do you think, Josh Allen needs a star receiver? And he's like, yeah, like basically like, yeah, he does. And he's going to show it, man. It doesn't matter who's out there. That dude's going to ball out on you. And obviously we have a huge game against Kansas City. I'm kind of torn on it because they always say it's hard to beat a team twice. So it's like, do we want to go up there and smack them around? And then Then it comes playoff time. I know we're going to see them in the playoffs. So this week, it's like it's kind of a bittersweet game because they're undefeated. It would be cool to break their undefeated, but at the same time, we know we're going to see them again. And maybe if we lose to them, it'll be a little more motivating in the playoffs. But with that being said, it's going to be in Buffalo. I never want to see Patrick Mahomes come into Buffalo and beat us. I was there last year in the playoffs. It's unfortunate. I've been to the last 2 Bills games where they got eliminated. I went to the Kansas this last year, and then I was at the Bengals game the year before. So I'm like, dude, like maybe it always works out like this where this year I'm going to fight in December, and if and when they go to the playoffs, I'll probably go to at least one game. So hopefully, they're able to pull it off when it matters. This week, obviously, it's a massive game. I'm not taking it as seriously though because it doesn't really matter what happens in the regular season. We've had good regular seasons the last 4 or 5 years. What really matters is what happens in the playoffs. I'm just hoping that all the core guys can stay healthy and we can go on a run and finally get a championship.
Yeah, for you, buddy. I hope that happens. And on December 14th, I'll be rocking this bad boy right here.
I appreciate
my guy, Billy Q, MMA, all day, every day. December 14th, UFC on ESPN. Our guy Billy Quarantillo takes on Cub Swanson. And I think our show back in the day, I think it was when I was with Ian, we were the first show that you you were pronouncing your name correctly because we were pissed off because when you went on there Quarantillo, I'm like, nah, man, say it right, man. Pronounce it right for my guy, Billy Q.
Jay, you say it perfectly, man. I appreciate that. You're a Tampa legend, and I always appreciate you having me. I'll come chat with you anytime you want, brother.
You're the man. Keep on grinding, man. And I'll see you at Amalie on December 14th, man. I appreciate your time and go Bills. Only for you. I grew up a Giants fan, but I root for the Bills whenever they're on because of you, my friend. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
All right, Jay. Later, brother.
All right, man. The one and only Billy Quarantillo. Look at this thing, man. Billy Q MMA. Can't beat it, man. Not bad with a headband, but unfortunately, I'm getting older, so my forehead's getting bigger. Man, what a show today, huh? Holy smokes, back to back. That's how it's going to be like here on the Jay Recher podcast. Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com, talking all things hockey. Colleen Wright from the Tampa Bay Times. How great was she? She was phenomenal. Just really good stuff. Then Leo Fernandes from the Tampa Bay Rowdies. And then, of course, our guy, Billy Quarantillo. He is the man, UFC fighter, going to take on Cub Swanson December 14th, UFC on ESPN over at Amalie Arena. Go get those tickets now, amaliearena.com. A couple of things I wanted to get into real quick. Mike Edwards, back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They bring the old safety in, former member of the Bucs. He just gets waived by the Titans. I know a lot of people are excited to see Mike Edwards back with the Bucs. Just one thing I want to warn everybody. He's gotten waived twice already this year, right? So we know that he's a ball hawk, but I feel like sometimes fan bases get nostalgia. I don't think is a good thing. When you want to bring a guy back and think that you're going to get that same guy, that's not necessarily what you're going to get. You need guys that can contribute in a big way. And I know Tyke Smith has missed some time. Antoine Winfield Jr., probably a guy that needs to take his game to the next level to help this defense out. But I mean, safety is one of their deeper positions. So, I mean, you waive a guy like Keenan Isaac, didn't make a huge impact since getting picked back up. This team needs to rush the passer better, and I would really still look somehow, some way, if you can find some kind of linebacker help as well. I hope Mike Edwards can contribute. If you look at the positive aspect of it, you look at a guy that doesn't need a whole bunch of time to get back on the same page. He knows this Todd Bowles defense, so that is a positive, right? But if you're looking at him and thinking that he's going to be a guy that is going to come in and get 2 or 3 interceptions in 3 weeks, like that may be a little bit too tall of a task for him to be able to do, but certainly something to keep an eye on moving forward for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A well-deserved bye week for them. Back in action next week. They're going to need to go on a streak here if they're going to make the playoffs. So all those guys, a physical and a mental rest. That's what the Tampa Bay Lightning were able to do over the last 6 days or so. You saw it pay off last night against the Winnipeg Jets as they defeated them to push them to 15-2 on the season. So hopefully the Buccaneers can follow that script and do the same thing next weekend and get back to their winning ways. USF, let's talk about them a little bit here on the program. Men's basketball, they're in action tonight against West Georgia. The Bulls at 1-2 on the season. West Georgia 0-3. I will be in the building at the Yuengling Center. Wasn't able to go a couple of nights ago against Arkansas Pine Bluff. I like how USF came out of the gates against Florida. You look at the final score, they lost by 15, but they were in that game. Loved the effort. I didn't feel like they really brought that same kind of juice, and they didn't really fire on all cylinders against Charleston. Good to see him come back home on the 12th and win that one. It's going to be a little emotional for them, right? The start of the season without Coach Amir Abdur-Rahim, you can see behind my shoulder here. He'll always be right here on the Jay Recher podcast. We miss Coach AAR. But tonight is the night, right? Continue to build. West Georgia's not the greatest team again. They're 0-3. Find what works. Find your rotation. Find what your starters are going to be like. Find how you're going to play. Because we saw last year, you kind of knew what the starting five was going to be like. You knew Selton McGill and the impact he was going to have coming off the bench. You knew that you were trying to get up and down the court, shoot a bunch of threes, be very athletic. What is this team like, right? This team needs to build its identity, and I think you start moving in that direction. I think you did the other night, but I think you take another step tonight against West Georgia. USF Football back in action tomorrow, and you want to see how they respond after the 28-7 loss to Navy at Charlotte, and then next week against Tulsa, and then you finish up the regular season at Rice. These are three of the teams towards the bottom of the standings in the American Athletic Conference. You have better records than all three. I know it's been an up and down season for the Bulls. A lot of people were wondering, are they fringe, contenders for maybe the college football playoff now that it's expanded? Are they going to vie for the conference crown? Well, unfortunately, it hasn't worked out for them, but they're sitting at 4-5 with 3 winnable games in front of them. The big question is Bryce Archie going to be under center, or is it going to be Byron Brown? Some people are telling me that there's a really good chance that he'll be in there tomorrow against Charlotte, but this offense looks so different with him there. Not just the passing threat, but we know the running threat. They need him if they're going to be able to fire on all cylinders and to be able to get the most out of that offense that Alex Golesh put so much work into. And Bryce Archie has been, he kind of is what he is. He's not a guy that's going to run as much. He's around a 50% completion percentage. If they're going to be effective on offense, they need a guy that's going to be able to complete passes at a higher clip and also be a factor in the running game. The answer is Byron Brown. So hopefully he can come back tomorrow against Charlotte in that game. Again, you play Tulsa next week and then Rice the following week. 3 games. If the Bulls can win these 3 games and finish the season 7-5 with the bowl game, I think a lot of people will look at it, kind of the totality of the season, and go, maybe not as high as we thought they could have been, but hey, they're in a bowl game, right? A couple of years ago, this was a team that, had trouble winning against teams at all in FBS. So really, really good stuff there. All right, I want to thank all of my guests on the program today, including Erik Erlendsson, as well as Colleen Wright, Leo Fernandes, and Billy Quarantillo. A lot of fun here on the Jay Recher podcast. Not doing this on a daily clip as of yet, but every once in a while, I'm going to pop in and do my thing. I will be live on Monday because I have a interview scheduled with Chris Latvala, the Pinellas County commissioner that is against this deal for the Tampa Bay Rays. And he's catching a lot of heat from people. But he's looking at it from a point of view of, well, regardless of what his incentive is, he's kind of iffy on the deal in the first place. And now that the Tampa Bay Rays are going to play the 2025 season there in Tampa at Steinbrenner Field, he's wondering, why are we doing this if we're not getting any of the money from the tourists that usually come to the St. Pete, to the Pinellas area for Tampa Bay Rays games. So we had a good conversation with Colleen Wright today, kind of touching on a little bit of everything, hoping to get somebody from the Rays on, possibly from the Tampa Bay side, the Hillsborough County side, because I want to get every single angle when it comes to this discussion. It's easy to look at Chris and to be like, screw you don't know what you want. And, I can't believe you would do this to people in the Tampa Bay area. Well, he's looking at it from a certain perspective, and I think it's only right to be able to hear him out, agree, disagree, and then go from there. Too many times now, I believe, whether it's sports or politics or religion, we disagree with somebody and it's like, F that guy, who cares about him? Well, I think that's a little too short-sighted. I want to hear dissenting ideas. I want to hear people that are, they believe in something else. That's the only way we're going to grow. That's the only way you're going to make better decisions and learn how to compromise and learn how to converse with people to come to resolutions that everybody's happy. Some concessions over here, concessions over there. I mean, that's just the way it goes. That should be how the way it goes. But unfortunately, right now we have a guy, who doesn't agree necessarily with the Bonds and what the Rays are doing, and upset of the radio silence. And people are looking at him like, he's the worst person in the world. Well, I don't necessarily see it that way, even though I may not agree with his point of view. But we're going to hear from him at 12:20 on Monday, right here on the Recher podcast. And of course, that we're going to have more guests lined up as well. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. I really appreciate all the love and the kind messages that I've gotten over the last couple of weeks. I told you the wheels are in motion, and even more things coming in 2025 on the Recher podcast and beyond. Again, I'll be at the Yingling Center tonight for USF men's basketball, and then, of course, tomorrow night at Amalie Arena for Lightning and Devils. Follow me on all social media platforms at Recher. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time right here on the Recher podcast.